Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Before we begin, I want to tell you one thing. This episode might be hard, not because I'm going to say unpleasant things, but because we'll be talking about something many of us try not to think about the time that's already passed, about plans that got lost somewhere along the way, about that strange feeling when you look at your life and think it was supposed to be different. If you know that feeling, stay. This episode is for you. If you don't, stay too, because one day you might feel it, and then you'll know that it's normal. I thought for a long time about whether to record this episode, because this is a personal topic, a hard one, the kind of topic that's easy to talk about on the surface, but hard to really get to the heart of. But then I thought about everything I hear, about people telling me about their struggles, about that sense that time is slipping away, that life is passing by, that they're stuck in this strange place between not yet and already too late. And I thought that maybe it's worth talking about, openly, honestly, without pretending I have all the answers, because I don't, no one does. But sometimes the conversation itself helps, simply naming what we feel, realizing that we're not alone in it. Before we go any further, I have a question for you, and I really would love for you to answer it in the comments. You don't have to write a lot, a few words are enough. If you could go back 10 years and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? Write it in the comments. I'll read it. And maybe your answer will help someone else. Alright, let's begin. I've divided today's episode into 3 parts. First, we'll talk about where this feeling comes from and why it affects so many of us. Then, we'll look deeper. What's behind it? What psychological mechanisms are at play? And finally, and this will be the longest part, we'll talk about what you can do with it, concrete, practical things, today. But before all that, one important disclaimer. Not everything I say will be for you, and that's okay. Each of us is different. We have different stories, different experiences, different possibilities. What helps one person might not work for another, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want you to treat this episode as an instruction manual for your life. It's more of a conversation, a collection of thoughts, inspirations. Take what fits, leave the rest. And one more thing, I'm not promising that after this episode everything will change. Change doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be fast. Sometimes a small step is enough. One new way of looking at yourself. And that's already a lot. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Imagine this. It's a Saturday morning. You're drinking coffee, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you see a photo of a friend from university. He's just bought a house, or got a promotion, or is off on yet another exotic vacation. And something switches on inside you, an inner calculator. It starts adding things up. He has a house. I don't. He earns more. I'm still in the same place. He has 2 kids. I don't even have a partner. He's happy. And me? And suddenly your coffee doesn't taste as good. The charm of a Saturday morning disappears. Because you've just done what most of us do. You've taken stock. A life achievement balance sheet is like a mental spreadsheet. On one side, you write down what you were supposed to achieve. On the other, what you actually have. Then you compare. And most of the time that second column looks pale. Because there is always someone who has more, who's achieved more, who's further ahead. This balance sheet can show up at different moments. Sometimes it's triggered by comparing ourselves to others. Sometimes by milestone birthdays, turning 30, 40, 50. Sometimes by life events, a divorce, losing a job, a loved one's illness.
And sometimes it comes out of nowhere, in the middle of the night, when you can't sleep, and you think, where did the time go?
Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret is 41. She's an accountant. She has a stable job, an apartment, a car. From the outside, everything looks fine, but inside, Margaret feels something else. By this age, I was supposed to have my own business. I was supposed to travel. I was supposed to have a family. And what do I have? I've been sitting in the same office for 10 years. My life is work, home, Netflix, on repeat. Margaret isn't deeply unhappy. She doesn't have depression. She just feels this emptiness, disappointment, as if life was supposed to be bigger, more intense, more hers. And I'm sure some of you are nodding right now because you know that feeling. But let me tell you about Mike as well, because Mike is a bit different. Mike is 52, and from the outside, he's successful. He has his own company, he earns good money, he has a wife, 2 adult children, a house outside the city. But when I spoke with Mike, he said something that surprised me. You know, for 30 years I chased, built, achieved, and now I look at all of this and think, what for? The kids moved out and barely call. My wife and I have nothing to talk about, because for years we only talked about responsibilities. And I don't know who I am without work. I don't have friends. I don't have hobbies. All I have is the company. Do you see the difference? Margaret regrets not having achieved enough. Mike regrets achieving, but not the things that truly mattered. These are 2 sides of the same coin. A life balance sheet can hurt when you feel you have too little. But it can also hurt when you have a lot, just not what you really needed. And that's an important lesson. Outer success doesn't guarantee inner peace. Sometimes it even makes it harder, because you're chasing the next goal and don't notice that you're losing something more precious along the way. If you think you're alone in this, let me reassure you, you're not. Research shows that the feeling of unmet life expectations affects a huge part of us. In one study conducted by psychologists at Cornell University, over 70% of adults admitted that they regularly think about things they never managed to do. Over 70%. That's not a margin of error. That's the majority. Interestingly, studies also show that this feeling doesn't disappear with age. You might think older people, wiser and more experienced, worry less about it. But no, regret over unfulfilled dreams stays with us throughout life. Only its content changes. In our 20s, we regret not taking a gap year. In our 30s, not changing careers. In our 40s, not spending more time with our kids. In our 50s, not taking better care of our health. And so on. There's a well-known set of observations made by Bronnie Ware, an Australian nurse who spent years caring for people who were dying. She talked with them and asked what they regretted at the end of life. If you'd like, I can expand on the most common regrets she heard. And do you know what the most frequent answer was? I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I'll read that again because it matters. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself. They didn't regret not earning more. They didn't regret not having a bigger house. They regretted living according to other people's expectations. That's a very important clue. Remember it. We'll come back to it later. But Bronnie Ware also collected other regrets, and they're worth knowing because they form a pattern. The second most common regret was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. That was said mainly by men. They regretted missing their children's childhood, not being present for important moments, trading life for work, and now at the end, work meant nothing. The third regret, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. People had suppressed emotions to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to fit expectations, and later they regretted never saying what they truly felt. The fourth, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. In the rush of life, work, family responsibilities, friendships slipped to the background. And at the end of life, it turned out those friendships were what gave the greatest sense of meaning. And the fifth regret, I wish I had let myself be happier. That might sound strange, but many people admitted that happiness had been a choice, and they chose routine, safety, conformity instead. Why am I telling you this? Because these regrets show a pattern. At the end of life, people don't regret material things. They don't regret status. They regret relationships, authenticity, the courage to be themselves. And maybe, just maybe, it's worth thinking about that now. Not at the end of life, now. Our life balance can take many forms. Sometimes it's sharp and painful, like an existential crisis. Sometimes it's gentle and quiet, like a constant background melody. Sometimes it shows up as anger. At yourself, at circumstances, at the world. Sometimes as sadness, a deep quiet sorrow. Sometimes as fear. The fear that it's already too late, that the train has left. And sometimes as numbness, that feeling that nothing makes sense. Why bother if nothing will come out of it anyway? All of these reactions are normal. They're human. They're a sign that something matters to you. Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't feel anything at all. Okay. We already know what a life achievement balance sheet is. We know that it affects most of us. But why? Where does it come from? Let me explain a few psychological mechanisms behind it that will help you understand that this isn't your personal failing. It's not a character flaw. It's how the mind works. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger formulated a theory of social comparison. I mentioned it in one of the episodes. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. People evaluate themselves by comparing themselves to others. It's natural. We've done it since childhood. We compare our grades with classmates, our toys with the neighbor's toys, our popularity with other people's. The problem is that today we have the whole world to compare ourselves to. That's our daily source of comparison. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. Every day we see hundreds of people showing their best moments, their successes, their perfect lives. And we compare their best moments with our everyday, our doubts, our failures. It's not a fair comparison, but our brain doesn't know that. Our brain reacts emotionally. It sees someone who has more, and we feel worse. Studies show that people who spend more time on social media more often experience a sense of dissatisfaction with life. They more often feel that their life is worse than other people's. But hold on. That doesn't mean social media are bad. It means we need to be aware of this mechanism. We need to know that what we see online is not the full picture of reality. The second mechanism has a beautiful name: hedonic adaptation, or as some researchers call it, the hedonic treadmill. The idea is this: when we achieve something we really wanted, a promotion, a new car, a dream apartment, we feel happy, but only for a while. Then we get used to it and start wanting something else. It's like running on a treadmill. You're running and running, but you're still in the same place. Think about your first mobile phone. Do you remember the joy, the excitement? Now you have a phone 1,000 times better, and you feel nothing because you're used to it. Or think about your first paycheck. Remember? You felt rich, independent, and now you're probably earning much more. But do you feel dramatically happier? There's a famous study that illustrates this beautifully. Psychologists examined two groups of people: lottery winners and people who had had accidents and become paralyzed. Intuitively, we think winning the lottery is happiness, being paralyzed is a tragedy. And at first, that's exactly how it looks. But what happens after a year? After 2 years? It turned out that both groups' happiness levels went back to where they had started. Lottery winners were no happier than before the win, and paralyzed individuals, even though their lives were objectively harder, adapted and found happiness again. That's the power of hedonic adaptation. It works in both directions. We get used to the good, but we also get used to the hard. Psychologists at Princeton study how much money you need to feel happy, and they discovered something surprising. After crossing a certain threshold, in the US, it was about $75,000 a year. Additional money didn't increase happiness. Why? Because we adapt. A millionaire isn't necessarily happier than someone from the middle class. Their normal is just different, and they too want more. What does this mean for our life balance? It means that even when we reach our goals, we rarely feel fully satisfied because there are already new goals, a higher bar. And again, we feel we haven't made it. This is the trap we all fall into. We think, I'll be happy when I get a promotion, when I buy an apartment, when I find a partner. Then we get those things, and the happiness lasts a moment. And again, we think, I'll be happy when... And so it goes for a lifetime. Another mechanism is fascinating. It's called the end of history illusion. It was discovered by psychologists Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson. They studied how people perceive changes in their lives. And what did they find? That almost everyone, regardless of age, believes that now they're their final version, that their values, preferences, and goals won't change anymore. A 20-year-old thinks, now I know what I want from life. That won't change. A 30-year-old thinks the same, and so does a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old. Yet when we look back, we see how much we've changed. How different our goals were 10 years ago. How differently we used to think. What follows from this? The goals you set long ago may have been the goals of someone else, the person you used to be, not the person you are now. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that you didn't reach them isn't a failure. Maybe it's a sign that you took a different path, that you changed, that you outgrew those old dreams. This is very important and often overlooked. We live in a society that hands us certain life scripts, scenarios for what a good life should look like. In your 20s, finish your studies. In your 30s, build a career and start a family. In your 40s, reach your financial peak. In your 50s, start thinking about retirement. Those scripts are everywhere. In movies, in ads, at family gathering. So when's the wedding? So when's the baby coming? So when's the promotion? I remember being at a family gathering where an aunt asked my cousin. She was 30 at the time, well educated, with a good job. So when are you having kids? My cousin said she didn't know if she wanted children. And the room went silent, as if she'd said something inappropriate, as if she'd broken some unwritten rule. Because she had. She broke the script. And you know what's worst about these scripts? They're invisible. We don't realize we're living by them. We think these are our choices. But in reality, they are choices shaped by the culture we grew up in. Take a moment and think, how do you know that you're supposed to have a certain job, a certain kind of home, a certain status? Who told you that? The problem is that these scripts are one size fits all, and people are not. Not everyone wants children. Not everyone wants a big career. Not everyone wants to get rich. And that's okay. But when we live in a world that promotes one model of success, we feel bad if we don't fit it. I know someone who quit a well-paid corporate job to become a carpenter. His family was in shock. All those years of study, all that effort. And now you're going to make furniture? But he was happy. For the first time in years, because he was finally doing what he truly wanted, not what others expected. We're coming back here to Bronnie Ware's findings. The most common regret of the dying. I wish I had lived according to my own expectations, not everyone else's. Our brain is designed to look for problems. It makes sense from an evolutionary point of view. Our ancestors who ignored danger didn't survive. Those who were alert, constantly scanning for threats, passed their genes on. That's why we have what psychologists call negative bias. We automatically pay more attention to bad things than to good ones. What does this mean for our life balance? It means we automatically focus on what we lack, on what we haven't achieved, on failures. And our successes, achievements, those fade into the background. They become normal, not worth noticing. When you take stock of your life, your brain automatically highlights the gaps. It's not an objective assessment, it's a distorted picture. Let's sum up. Why do we create life achievement balance sheets? And why do they so often come out against us? First, we compare ourselves to others, and social media give us endless opportunities to do that. Second, we adapt to our successes, so we never truly feel we've arrived. Third, we judge ourselves by goals we set long ago, when we were a different person. Fourth, we live by cultural scripts that may not fit our true self. Fifth, our brain is wired to see what's missing, not what's working. Put all of this together, and it's no surprise so many people feel inadequate. It's not that something is wrong with us, it's the system we live in, and the mechanisms that run inside us. But, and here's the good news, once we understand these mechanisms, we can start doing something about them. And that's what the next part is about. Okay, this is the part you've been waiting for. What can you do? Before we start, reminder, not everything will be for you. Pick what fits, leave the rest. And don't expect miracles. Change takes time, sometimes a lot of time. And that's okay. I have 5 steps for you, 5 things you can do today, or tomorrow, or this week, at your own pace. The first step may seem paradoxical. I've just told you that a life balance sheet is a trap, and now I'm encouraging you to make one. but on one condition: do it honestly and fully. What does that mean? When we spontaneously take stock, we focus on what's missing, but an honest balance includes both sides. Not only what you didn't achieve, but also what you did. The exercise is simple. Take a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the left, write what I haven't achieved. On the right, what I have achieved. You'll probably fill in the left side quickly. The right side will be harder. We're not used to appreciating ourselves, but try. Think about small things, about difficulties you've overcome, about relationships you've built, skills you've learned, moments when you were important to someone. Let me tell you about Tom. Tom is 45. All his life he's felt like a failure. He didn't finish university. He didn't build a career. He didn't make a fortune. But when he did an honest balance, he saw something else. He was there when his children were born. He took care of his sick mother for 2 years. He learned how to fix cars and helped his neighbors. He was a friend you can call at 3 a.m. Are these achievements? In the eyes of the world, maybe not. In the eyes of the people he helped, absolutely. This isn't about convincing yourself that everything is fine. It's about seeing the full picture, not just the gaps, the whole story. Research in positive psychology shows that regularly writing down things we're grateful for significantly improves our well-being. Robert Emmons from UC Davis conducted years of research on gratitude. People who wrote down 5 things they were grateful for every day for 3 weeks felt happier, more optimistic, and had better physical health. An honest life balance is a form of gratitude. A moment when you say, yes, there are things that could have been different, but there are also things I did well. The second step is harder. It takes courage, but it's crucial. Question your goals. Those goals you didn't reach, where did they come from? Were they really yours? Or did you take them on from your parents, from society, from advertising? Who said you had to own a home by 30? Who said you had to earn a certain amount? Who said you had to have that particular job title? Remember the end of history illusion? We change. Goals we set 10 years ago may have belonged to someone else, the person we were back then, and maybe it's a good thing we didn't reach them. Exercise. Take one goal you didn't reach, one that really hurts, and ask yourself, is this really my goal? If I had achieved it, would I actually be happier? Is this something I want or something others expect of me? Maybe the answer is, yes, this really is my goal. Then it's worth exploring what you can do to move toward it. But maybe the answer is, I don't know, or probably not. In that case, maybe it's time to let that goal go, without guilt, without regret. Annie wanted to be a lawyer all her life. That's how she was raised. Her parents were lawyers, her brother was a lawyer. It was obvious she would be one too. But she didn't get into law school. She tried 3 times. Each time she was a few points short. She studied public administration instead. She felt like a failure. 15 years passed. Annie works in a non-profit. She helps refugees. She loves her job. One day someone asked, "Do you regret not becoming a lawyer?" She thought for a moment and said, "No, that goal wasn't mine. It was my family's. I found my own." I'm not saying all unfulfilled goals are unimportant. I'm saying they're worth examining. It's worth asking, is this truly mine? The third step has to do with how you think about failure. In psychology, there's a concept called reframing. It means looking at the same situation from a different angle. It's not about pretending everything is great. It's not about positive thinking in the everything will work out sense. It's something else. It's about noticing that every experience, even a difficult one, taught you something, shaped you, built you. Take an example. Your relationship ended, it hurts, it's a loss, it's a failure. But you can also look at it differently. What did you learn? Maybe you realized which values matter most to you in a partnership. Maybe you learned to set boundaries. Maybe you discovered that some compromises aren't worth the price. That doesn't mean minimizing the pain. It means looking for meaning in hard experiences. Let me tell you about Kate. Kate lost her job at 42. She'd worked at the same company for 15 years. She thought she'd stay there until retirement. Then came restructuring, group layoffs, and Kate was out of a job. The first month was awful. Kate felt like a failure. She thought it was over, that no one would hire her at this age, that she wasted 15 years. But then she started talking to people. She went to coaching, and slowly she began to see her situation differently. She realized she'd been unhappy there for years. She'd hated her boss. The job was boring and meaningless, but she'd been afraid to leave because it felt safe. The layoff forced a change she'd never have chosen on her own. Today, 3 years later, Kate runs a small business. She's not making a fortune, but for the first time in years, she feels she's doing something that matters. For the first time, she wakes up excited. Does she regret being laid off? She says it was the worst and best day of her life at the same time. I'm not saying every failure is a blessing in disguise. I'm not saying you should be grateful for painful experiences. Sometimes failure is just failure, and it hurts. But the way you interpret your story matters. You can see yourself as a victim of your life or as its author. That's a choice, a hard one, but possible. Viktor Frankl, the famous psychiatrist and concentration camp survivor, once wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." Frankl survived the camp in part because he had a purpose, to finish his book. Those experiences later became the foundation of logotherapy, a therapeutic approach centered on the search for meaning. Modern research confirms his intuition. People who can find meaning in difficult experiences cope better with trauma. They're more resilient. They have fewer symptoms of depression and anxiety. Reframing failure is not a psychological trick. It's a survival tool and a tool for growth. Exercise. Take one failure from your life and ask yourself, what did this teach me? How did it shape me? Who would I be if this had never happened? You don't have to feel grateful for what happened, but you can notice that it gave you something too. The fourth step is practical, and it might be hard to implement, but it's very effective. Limit comparisons. I'm not saying you should never compare yourself. That's impossible, but you can control who you compare yourself to and how often. Some practical suggestions. First, limit your time on social media. You don't have to delete anything, but maybe turn off notifications or set specific times of day for scrolling, or do a 1-week detox and see how you feel. Second, clean up your feed. Unfollow accounts that trigger negative emotion. You don't have to hate these people. You just don't have to see their highlight reel every day. Third, compare yourself to your past self. Instead of asking, How do I measure up against others? Ask, how do I measure up against who I was a year ago? 5 years ago? That's the comparison that makes sense, because it reflects your actual growth. Research from the University of Pennsylvania showed that cutting social media use to 30 minutes a day for 3 weeks significantly reduced anxiety, depression, and loneliness in participants. 30 minutes, 3 weeks. That's simple. I'm not saying it will solve everything, but it's one of those steps you can take today. Something concrete, straight away. The fifth and final step, for me, the most important one. When we look at our lives and see the gap between where we are and where we want to be, it's easy to freeze, easy to say, it's too much, I'll never get there. So don't look at the gap, look at the next step. One small step, that's it. You want to change jobs? You don't have to send out 100 resumes today. It's enough to update your LinkedIn profile. You want to be healthier? You don't have to run a marathon today. It's enough to go for a 15-minute walk. You want to repair a relationship? You don't have to have a big conversation today. It's enough to send a message. Small steps work for several reasons. First, they're achievable. They don't demand superhuman effort. You can do them even on a bad day. Second, they build momentum. Each small success gives you energy for the next one. Third, they shift your identity. When you consistently take small actions, you start seeing yourself differently. You're no longer the person who never does anything. You become someone who acts. Let me tell you about John. For years, John said he wanted to write a book. It was his childhood dream. But he never started because when he thought about writing a whole book, he froze. 200 pages, 300, where would he find the time? One day he read about the 2-minute rule. He decided to try. His goal wasn't to write a book. His goal was write for 2 minutes a day. 2 minutes. Nothing, right? Everyone has 2 minutes. And John started writing. 2 minutes. Sometimes 5. Sometimes, when he got into it, half an hour. But the minimum was 2 minutes. After a year, he had 60,000 words. Almost an entire book. Out of 2 minutes a day. See how that works? A tiny step feels insignificant. 2 minutes? What's that going to do? But 2 minutes a day is 14 minutes a week, 60 minutes a month, 12 hours a year. And more importantly, those 2 minutes change how you see yourself. You're no longer someone who will write a book someday. You're someone who writes. That's the difference between a dream and action. A dream is someday. Action is today. Even if it's just 2 minutes. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, talks about the 1% rule. If you get 1% better every day, after a year you'll be 37 times better. 37 times. From 1% a day. B.J. Fogg from Stanford created a habit-building method based on very small steps. He is a classic example. If you want to start flossing, don't promise yourself, from tomorrow, I'll floss every day. Start with something laughably small. After I brush my teeth, I'll floss one tooth. One tooth. It sounds absurd, right? But it works. Because once the floss is in your hand, you usually do more. And even if you don't, you've built the habit, and that's the foundation. Final exercise, think of one change you'd like to make in your life, any area, and ask yourself, what is one small step I can take today? Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Write it down and do it. Let's summarize these 5 steps. Step 1, make an honest, full balance. Not just what's missing, but what you've achieved. Step 2. Question your goals. Check whether they're really yours. Step 3. Reframe failures. Look for what they taught you and how they shaped you. Step 4. Limit comparisons, especially those fueled by social media. Step 5. Choose one small step and take it today. You don't have to do all of them at once. Pick one, start there, see what happens. Then you can come back for the next. We're getting close to the end. There are a few more things I want to say. Today we've gone a long way. We talked about something difficult, about time that's passed, about plans that didn't work out, about that weird feeling when life doesn't look the way we imagined. But I want you to remember one thing. Your life is not a summary. Your life is a process. There's no finish line. There's no point where you can say, done, I've won, or done, I've lost. As long as you're alive, you have the possibility of change, big or small, fast or slow. But there is always a next step. I want to share a metaphor that might help. Imagine your life is a river, not a road, a river. A road has a beginning and an end, a fixed direction. Either you're on the right road or you've gotten lost. A river is different. A river flows. Sometimes fast, sometimes slowly, sometimes straight, sometimes winding. It meets rocks and flows around them. Sometimes it splits, sometimes it dries up for a while and then flows again. A river doesn't fail when it meets an obstacle. It adapts. It finds a new way. And you know what? In the end, every river reaches the sea. No matter how winding its path, no matter how many bends and obstacles, it gets there. Maybe your life doesn't look the way you planned. Maybe it was supposed to run straight, and instead it zigzags. And that's okay, because it's still your river, and it's still flowing. I don't know where you are in your life right now. I don't know what hurts, what you regret, what dreams didn't come true. But I know this. If you're watching this episode, it means you're searching. You want something to change. You're not giving up. And that alone is a huge step. Remember the question from the beginning? If you could go back 10 years and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? Now I want to ask you another question, maybe a harder one. What would you like you 10 years from now to say to the person you are today? Maybe they'd say, "Thank you for starting," or "Thank you for not giving up," or "Thank you for giving yourself a second chance." The future isn't written yet. You can still shape it every day, one small step at a time. To finish, I want to share something personal. I take stock too. I also sometimes look at my life and think, it was supposed to be different. I compare myself to others. I feel that middle of the night anxiety. I'm not an expert who has everything figured out. I'm a human being who's looking for answers, just like you. And maybe that's why we can talk. Because we're in this together. Thank you for staying until the end. That means a lot. If this episode was helpful, if even one idea stayed with you, I'd be grateful if you gave it a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm and lets more people see it. And if you'd like more conversations like this, feel free to subscribe. I post regularly and try to make every episode meaningful. And don't forget to answer the question in the comments. I truly want to read your answers. Take care and see you in the next episode.